of me out there, I don't care, okay? If I have to pay what I gotta pay, I'll pay it, okay? But I talk to a lot of people, I go ask them, and they don't even know nothing about this. If we're so concerned about people, no, hey, you're gonna pay more if this don't happen, maybe we're doing something, we're borrowing money against whatever, are you interested? They don't know, okay? They don't have no idea, okay? Some of them not interested on it, and some of them are very naive on it because they don't know anything about it, okay?
Which is why
So
we're
how
having
can
this
we go
meeting.
about it to put it out to people so they can understand and we can explain to them, okay? Hey, you know, we borrowing this money and this is what we're gonna use it for, okay? And we've been talking about it for a long time, and we want to do it right now is because all this is happening and maturing and all this and all that. But I think we need to really, if we're going to be accounting, okay, and for the people, we should talk to the people before you should start making decisions. Well, let me tell you something. I'm sure you already put it in there without really talking to the people. We have not decided, and it's already in there.
No, it's
already
not.
been in, right?
What's where? It's
Well,
not, because
it's
that's when
already-
you hold an election.
Okay, so-
Because you, the people, will vote on this issue, and you either pass it or not. It's not a done deal until the voter
So-
goes to the booth and votes.
Okay, so
And
don't you
tell
think
the
that
votes.
before the commissioners, okay, can start making decisions on it, should have brought it to us first and hear what we need to say before Frost and Candelaria decide, let's go for it? You see what I'm saying? Don't you think they should have talked to us first, and you should have got a good idea, hey, they're not for it. You see what I'm saying? Instead of trying to run over her, right, the other commissioner, and just do whatever, don't you think that should have happened first, right? I would have done it that way.
Well,
If I want to be an honest commissioner, I would say, hey, you know, this is what we're trying to do, lay it on the table, this is the reason why, okay, let's talk to the people and see what they want to do. And when the people say, we're good, and then you can say, you know what? She would have said yes, because we all agree on it. We're good, right? So you're good. We don't need to do none of these, right? But now you're doing something backwards, or something's going on that I'm getting bad vibes on it. Let me tell you something. Okay, I'm half Indian, I'm getting something bad that I don't understand. I'm trying to figure out what is it that you're trying to do or push. I don't get it. But something is not right. Okay?
Vanessa has had her hand up to speak.
Go ahead.
No, I wanted to thank you for clarifying the timing, because I think that made sense, that wondering why we didn't wait till the general to save money, because I know this one probably cost quite a bit of money to put it together, but it was so that we would have a steady property tax, it wouldn't change, and then the next time we get our bill, then it would be different. So that makes sense. My next question is, he said something about the election, but this wouldn't affect, since Commissioner Candelaria is going out, this money isn't going to be spent before November anyway, correct? I mean,
Right.
because there's still quite a long process before those dollars are even available and the bond is even sold and the rate is determined. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we said this is a very lengthy process. And even if the public voted yes on all these questions, that doesn't mean the bonds are going to be issued. That's still a commission decision, whether or not to issue bonds. So,
But they have to be issued because they're already there.
But let's say
haven't even voted on it.
one of them passes, or let's say two of them pass, or whatever. Realistically, when do you think those projects would be funded and going forward? I mean, it wouldn't be until probably 2017, or?
I'd say it couldn't happen in this fiscal year. It would be after July. And that, I mean, I've never done this before. I've never gone through this GEO bond process, but I know that it's going to take, the election can't even be finalized until mid-October. And then you're going to have to start having consultations with financial advisors and discussing more specifics about projects. And that's going to take several months. And then the commission is going to ultimately have to adopt an ordinance, which is going to take another couple months. And then they're going to have to decide which bonds to issue, and that's gonna take some time, and then they're gonna have to go out on the market and find a purchaser for the bonds.
True, it's a pretty long process,
Yeah.
so are we gonna go through each one, or are we gonna talk about each one specifically? Okay, because
So I
have one question.
So the taxes, only when the bonds are issued, will the taxes fluctuate or change? Or is that an immediate
Yes,
thing? Okay.
no, that would be,
So-
because at the point of the election, no bonds have been issued. There's no market, there's no dollars generated, nothing has happened, except the people have said, yes, we want this. And then it's up to the commission to make these decisions. So it's like buying a house, kind of. It's a long process. You have to fill out a bunch of paperwork, you have to get a lot of approvals, you have to find someone to finance you, you go through the process of buying the house, then you apply for the loan, you close on the loan, and then your payments start 60 days after your loan closes. So it's kind of the same thing, only with, bigger dollars and a lot more bureaucracy.
So your last payment's this month, and then the way the assessment cycle goes, all of that stuff basically is doing the governmental fiscal year, not the regular fiscal year, correct?
Well, no, if you're talking about the property taxes, we have to certify property taxes on September 1st. So
That's for next year.
the reason that we couldn't
For this
do
year.
the general
2016
election,
taxes.
if we're trying to extend a bond, the reason this couldn't be included in the general election is because taxes already have to be certified by then. So the tax rate and the mill would have already gone down with that certification because this bond will be paid off. So then we'd be voting to increase again because of that lack in time. Because the general election's in November and property taxes have to be certified in September.
Okay, that's kind of where my question's going. If you pay it off in August and it's not in this, I guess where I'm getting confused is you make the last payment in August, and if it's not, how is it not going to fluctuate? That's where I'm going with this. How is it not going to fluctuate between the last payment now, this election, and what Betty's job is to certify those values? How is that not going to fluctuate? I guess I don't understand why it won't fluctuate, because by the time you run this, your process is still going or finished. This runs in August, so this vote's coming through in August. Your process for evaluation is September? Is when it ends is September?
DFA will certify the mill rates with the values. They have to do it by September the 15th, I think it is,
So the election's happening in August,
for 2016 taxes.
okay, and then the vote on this is going to be based on 2016 numbers that you're doing now? That's what I'm not understanding. It's not going to fluctuate. It's based on property valuations. The election's in August, the valuations are completed and approved or whatever in September, last payment's in August. You got up to 4 years to issue the bonds. How is none of this going to fluctuate? If you haven't called the bonds, if you haven't called the bonds in the first year, then there's no payment due. How is it not going to fluctuate? Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, and that's a question that we have to clarify probably with bond counsel and the financial advisor. But my assumption is that if the voters vote yes on the questions, then you already know you have a mill that has been elected with these GO bonds, and so those would be calculated into the mill rates. That's not completely wrong.
Do you see what I'm asking?
I think that's exactly right. That you go ahead and you have the mill in, and it's added in, and then the county can issue those bonds at any point in time for the next 4 years. I mean, to carry your question out to its logical conclusion, I mean, the bonds may not be issued until 2019.
Or 4 years from now, they issued the whole kit and caboodle. So over the next 4 years,
But what DFA requires and taxation revenue requires is that once those are passed, that the mill levy, in this case, would stay the same, and the funds would be accumulating to pay back the debt once it's incurred.
so then in that scenario, inside the internal books of the county, that accumulated amount is going to be pushed off to the side and reserved for when the bonds are issued? Or is that going to be spent freely until the bonds are issued? How does that work?
It can't, Because in our budget, we have a debt overview that is only an amortization for GO bond every year, because we've had a GO bond in effect for 15 years. So those payments are allocated and they can't be used for.
Right, but you're making the last payment in August, and if this all passes, and the annual payment of $350,000 supposedly due, and the commission doesn't say, wait, they wait 4 years possibly to issue the bonds to go do these projects, say it's 4 years. Between now and year 4, what happens to that $350 annual payment? It's being collected, correct? And so what happens to that money? Is that separated inside the books, and is it held in reserve for when the bonds are actually issued?
By law, it has to be,
Yes.
and it has to
We
be
get
applied
it.
to bonds.
The GO
Okay.
bond has its own revenue fund and its own expenditure fund
Okay.
in every budget.
And there's no movement on that until something's satisfied? So then second scenario, if the commission decides they're not going to do any of them, maybe they look at them and the numbers are way off and they can't fund them. So even though the people said, yeah, we're going to agree to this, and then the commission gets down to the brass tacks and looks at everything and they're like, the numbers were bad, we just can't meet any of these projects. Then what happens to that money? Is it released back into the budget? How does that work?
I don't know the answer to that. Frankly, I think that that's just a situation where, generally speaking, you don't put bond projects out unless, you're pretty much committed to them. We normally see these in school bond elections. I mean, this is the way many of the capital projects are funded for schools.
Well, I'm bringing these scenarios up because I want to ask a very specific question.
And I think they're fair questions, and we may have to get bond counsel to.
So my specific question, and, we were talking about the semis, the tandems with the day cabs. Just for grands, I got up at 5 o'clock this morning and I said, what would a new one cost? And a Kenworth, I pulled a quick internet search, about $140,000. A used one, 2014 Kenworth, I found for $82,500. Well, the numbers that I remember hearing in commission meetings on that particular item was approximately 110. So at that number, on the question for the 100,000 for the road department, at that number, and I apologize, I don't remember how many units that you guys were talking about, but at that number, if the commission meeting, it was 110, and the 3 meetings of this grouping that I've listened to, it's been 70's been presented. So is the intent to buy new tandems? Is the intent to buy used tandems? If it's used, we're saying 70,000, and it was about a 60-40 split on that particular item from the other meetings, is how I was understanding it. So the intent would be to spend 40% of that $1 million on equipment, 60% on roads. If we're starting out with deflated numbers, and then that $1 million item's passed, and then across time you start searching for those vehicles. Well, if it was 6 vehicles at 70, that's a little bit different scenario than 6 of those, for example, at 140 apiece. So, I'm worried. I'm being really honest again, and I was at the other two. One of my biggest concerns is the tower project, $1.4 million. In the other meetings, it was stated that it was probably going to be $1.8 million. On that particular item, if it passes right out the gate, we're just a hair under $500,000 short. Where's that coming from? Same thing on the road question for equipment. If it's 70,000 and new vehicles from just that quick search, I don't see that happening. Where's all that extra money going to come from if the voters pass this? Well, of course, the commission's going to have to pull it out of their keister somewhere. So what do we got to do that with? We got general fund. We go beg the legislature. We ask the other municipals to get involved in some of this. And so then what if there still isn't enough money? Do you see where I'm going with this? My biggest concern is if we have like a $14 million capacity, we're asking the voters for 3.8 now. I think that I'm worried because I don't think these numbers are high enough to start off with. I don't think we're looking to borrow enough money. And I understand we didn't want to jack up. I understand we didn't want to jack up the property values. I totally get that. But what are we actually doing with this? If the voters approve this, they have an expectation from what we're doing at these meetings. And so we have them expecting this. It passes. We go 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, and then whoever's sitting at that table has to say, well, gee, we miscalculated. We can't do that. Boom, there goes the trust in your county government. So I really do want to support these projects. I'm not lying when I say that. But for me, it's just not working. The numbers don't work.
Well, we can go through, I mean, the plan was, and I.
Do it, please do.
Questions, but when we go through the projects, we can go through those specific questions. If we can get through this first part of the bond stuff, then we can get into the projects.
My question is, has there been
Or
any
whoever, I guess.
contract signed or given contingent upon the bond's passing?
To whom?
To your council, I'm asking you. Have you told people that they will get something if the bonds pass?
No, because we're forbidden from asking people to vote for the bonds. All we're trying to do is educate people and have them, and encourage voter participation. We're forbidden from that. We can't say, if you want roads done, go vote for this bond. We're forbidden from doing that.
That's not what I heard on the road.
If your bond consultants, and if I read correctly, they will get a $50,000 fee for if the bond passes?
I don't know what you're asking, but if you're asking about fees for bond counsel and for the financial advisor, their contracts are contingent on bonds being issued.
That's just what I asked.
Yes, but they don't get paid unless bonds are issued. That's just the way bond counsel and financial consultants work. We don't pay them until
Who
then.
are
They're going to
they?
issue the 3.8 million, right?
Were you asking about specific projects, Lonnie?
What's that?
Are you asking about specific projects?
I'm asking the projects, I'm asking if any of it is promised if it passes.
I don't understand. but
So,
Okay, I'll go slower.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any contracts with anybody, it doesn't matter whether it's a road project or what, including bond counsel, that if the bond passes, they will get a fee?
Yes,
Okay.
bond
simple.
counsel and financial advisor, because that's how those types of contracts are constructed.
How
Because
much
we
will that
cannot
be?
issue GO bonds
And how
without,
much is that fee?
we cannot issue GO bonds without bond counsel and a financial consultant.
Right. But when
And
you
they
issue
do
it,
not get paid unless bonds are issued.
when you issue it, how much does he get paid?
I don't know, I'd have to go pull the contracts. But
Is
I
it-
didn't sign the contracts, the commission did.
is it based on the total amount borrowed?
I don't even
Yeah,
remember.
the bond counsel is, I don't know about the consultant, but bond counsel is paid a percentage of the actual bonds. that-
What is the percentage?
issues. You know, I knew that was your next question, right? And I don't remember if it's it's 1.5, something. We'd have to look, I can't remember. But it's a standard, I mean, it's a rate that, you know, everybody in the state pretty much uses the same, I don't know, half dozen bond councils in Albuquerque. We've used Sutton, this one is the module law firm. The rate's pretty much standard across the state. I mean, it's not even something that's negotiable. They say this is what our rate is for doing this, so.
So there hasn't been any other contracts like for item number one, the towers, like pre-contracting saying, okay, this is contingent on the bonds passing.
Absolutely not.
None of that's gone on. Okay.
And the schools use this bond counsel also?
Yeah, we've used the module firm. We've been involved with them. Lonnie knows the module firm well. I mean, he should know them well. They handled the high lonesome wind project. So.
How long will it take to pay these off?
That's dependent on how much is issued, how many bonds are sold, and what the commission decides the term of the bond should be. It can be up to 20 years. The bond for the GO bond was 15, or I mean, for judicial was 15. So the idea is, and again, the commission can structure it however they want, assuming that any of them pass, but if only 600,000 were issued, then they would probably shorten up that term to keep the payments steady. You see what I'm saying? And so if it was the full 3.8, if you wanted to keep it about the steady, then it would be a 15-year term. Bill?
Would it be a safe statement to say that the discussion that happened in commission meetings has been available to every one of us in black and white and what, on the website. And so if we're not informed, it's a good time to begin to get that way.
Well, and it's been on the radio station, it's been on the website, it's been on the commission agendas. That's why we're having these public meetings, is to try to educate the voters. When the commission was deciding whether or not to have a special election or have an election at all, there was a public hearing that we were not required to have, that we chose to have. So we've tried really hard to reach out and grab a hold of everybody. Yes.
Aren't the minutes of, the commission meeting information, isn't that broadcast on the radio during the week?
Yep, it's on right now.
When the
budget
resolution was
hearing is
published
out
in
right
the
now.
paper. In fact, the bond company is publishing it a lot more than I would have, so the resolution's in the papers also, in the Mountain View. And then I've done notices like this in the paper that call more attention than a legal ad. And it's on my website, sample ballots on my website, resolution on my website, voter information is on my website.
The
And I
public
am-
meetings were on the website, the public meetings were in the newspaper, the public meetings have been advertised on the radio. So we've been trying to get people informed. Because we have to get voter participation or this dies in the water. So,
One thing that concerns me is, as a voter, and in terms of personal finance and how I plan and budget, none of these projects seem very urgent. I don't see anything on there that couldn't be postponed or budgeted for a longer term, or, as this gentleman mentioned, better fiscal responsibility in the terms of the present budget. We're gonna have debts now for many years, a big new debt, and we're gonna have to pay interest on that debt. We're gonna have to pay the consultant. We're gonna have to pay $23,000 for the special election. And I'm just wondering whether it's worth it.
which is completely your choice when you cast your ballot. So that can all be taken into consideration. I would like to kind of keep moving and go through the projects though, and we can discuss the urgency of the projects. Bill, yes?
Is it permissible for me to respond to what he said about urgency?
This is informal, so.
Okay. 40 years ago, when the county fair facility was built in the interest of young people, it was already a safety issue when you tried to walk underneath the barn looking after your animals in that corner of the barn. Citizens have put up with that for a long time. Now, is personal safety for our young people an issue, or shall we just put that off and put that barn's been torn down, I understand. But what are we doing? We're spending $10,000 a year, is it, for tents?
Correct.
What kind of a, it's an investment in the future. That's just one example.
But it's not phrased that way. If it were phrased that way, maybe it would get better support.
Okay, but I'll tell you, if you
And the
go
road department, as he points out, those two road issues, there's no urgency to that other than better oversight, better management of the current budgets.
there's no urgency to the road department.
Nope.
Until the 3 o'clock in the morning, an ambulance driver bangs on my door, and he's trying to get to a neighbor up there, and I get my tractor out, hook on that ambulance, and drag it 1.5 miles because the roads are not paved, and because those were not made public roads by a commission that's long since most of them did. And so, I'm talking. Your opinion about what's urgent and pressing and necessary is your opinion. Let's let the voters decide.
That's what we're doing. But money doesn't solve all the problems. Okay, and there's no guarantee that this money is gonna make your road any better. I would love for you to put that in black and white in the newspaper, sign your name to it. That'd be good, okay.
I just want to respond to what Bill was saying. The problem I've had in the past, back years, you weren't our county manager at the time, I don't remember who was, and I'm not even sure if you were the attorney at the time, but they had an obligation that was $250,000. And it was coming due just exactly like you guys are doing now. A lot less than what you're asking for now. They came before us, I was in the process of getting into planning and zoning, because at that time it was a circus. I mean, it was just, there was no control in the process and stuff. And one of the things that they said, if we continue this bond, we will promise to use it for the road department, which was $250,000. Well, in the process, I didn't go to the meetings and stuff, you know, I was working, I couldn't do it, but they got the bond passed again, supposedly for the road department, okay? When they passed it, I went before the road department and asked them, did you guys get the $250,000 extra? Because it was supposed to be strictly to help improve roads, and they said they never saw one dime
Okay,
on
John,
that. But
can you
let
tell us
me
what
finish.
year that was?
I don't remember,
10 years, 5 years?
Well, no, it was quite a few years ago, it was probably 10 or 12, maybe even longer. But this is the point that I'm getting at, is, I don't know if you realize or not, because you weren't here at the commission meeting that I came to, okay? My understanding that million, I told them, you're not putting enough money for the road department. If you have to buy some equipment so that the road department can drive safely, I agree with you. I think you do need, maybe not brand new trucks, but you sure as heck need better trucks. Because if the DOT ever stops you guys, they can shut your trucks down and you guys won't be able to run. But my concern is that we're always putting priorities on other stuff that we keep talking about improving roads. I don't know if you know it or not, whatever's left over was barely gonna cover to maintain the chip seal roads. None of that money's gonna go to work on other county roads. And that was my question to the commission, is you're gonna pump almost $1.5 million into communication towers, and I'm not saying that they're not needed, but I said, what the heck is it gonna do you any good to talk on the phone clearly if you can't get down the dirt road to fight the fire or to go for that emergency? I really think that where we're making a mistake is this county needs to do some infrastructure on their roads, and not just certain roads that keep getting the attention year after year after year. There's roads that haven't had attention for 20 years. And it's not fair to those areas, especially with the fact that you have a lot more population. Now, Bill was saying, talking about, we need to improve the roads. Well, I'll tell you, Bill, it's not gonna improve but the asphalt roads that are there. There's not gonna be.
Can I talk, I'll talk about that.
It's not gonna improve his road or nobody's road.
I'll talk about that. The purpose of